October 1943.
Occupied Holland.
Oberst Colonel Heinrich Braun was a perfectionist. He did not just command soldiers, he commanded artists. He stood on the edge of the large, flat meadow near the coast, his hands clasped behind his back, admiring the view. To the untrained eye, it was a terrifying sight. 2 squadrons of Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters were lined up on the runway. Fuel trucks were parked near the hangars. Anti-aircraft guns pointed menacingly at the gray sky. It looked like a fortress of the Luftwaffe. But if you walked up to one of the deadly fighter planes and knocked on the fuselage, it wouldn't ring like metal. It would thud like a coffin. "The propeller on number 4 is crooked," Braun barked. A terrified carpenter ran up with a hammer.
Jawohl, Herr Oberst.
Fixing it now. This was Anlage B Site B, a decoy airfield. For 3 months, Braun's men had labored in secret. They had cut down forests for timber. They had requisitioned every spare painter and carpenter in the district. They had built hangars out of canvas and plywood. They had built fuel trucks out of old farm carts. The goal was simple. The British RAF and the American USAAF were bombing Germany into dust. Braun's job was to make them drop their precious bombs here, on a field of wood and nails, instead of on the real airbase 10 miles east. "It must be perfect," Braun muttered to his adjutant. "The British reconnaissance cameras are sharp. If a shadow is wrong, if a wheel looks flat, they will know." "It looks real, sir," the adjutant promised. "Even the birds try to land on the hangars."
Braun smiled.
He was catching a shark with a wooden worm. "Let them come. Let them waste 1,000 tons of explosives on my toys." The eye in the sky, 25,000 feet above. Flight Lieutenant Jack Woody Thorne was aboard, flying a solitary Spitfire PR photo reconnaissance. Bluebird was a lonely job. No guns, no wingman, just cameras and a lot of high-octane gas. "Blue leader to base," Thorne radioed. "Sector 4 is quiet. Too quiet. Copy, Blue leader. Finish the sweep and come home for tea." Thorne banked his Spitfire to the left. Below him, the Dutch countryside was a patchwork of green and brown. Then he saw it. "Hello," Thorne whispered. "What do we have here?" He saw the airfield. It wasn't on his map. It looked brand new. The planes were lined up perfectly. Too perfectly. Thorne knew German pilots. They were messy. They left oil stains. They parked planes at odd angles. These planes looked like they were glued to the grass. "I'm going down for a closer look," Thorne said. "Negative, Blue leader," the radio crackled. "If that's an active base, the flak will shred you." "I don't see any flak bursts," Thorne said, pushing the stick forward. "I'm just going to tickle their noses." The Spitfire screamed down from the heavens. The airspeed indicator rattled past 400 miles per hour. Thorne leveled out at treetop height. He roared over the airfield at 300 feet. He expected tracer fire. He expected explosions. Instead, he saw a German soldier on a ladder, painting a black cross on the side of a plane. The soldier looked up, terrified, and fell off the ladder. The ladder hit the plane, and the plane's wing wobbled. It didn't dent. It bounced, like a diving board. Thorne pulled up, laughing so hard his oxygen mask slipped. "Base," Thorne gasped. "You're not going to believe this. I just buzzed a Luftwaffe base, and I think I saw a termite eating the leading edge of a Messerschmitt." The war room, 2 days later. RAF Benson, England. The reconnaissance photos were spread out on the table. Wing Commander Sterling tapped the glossy black and white image with his pipe. "It's a decoy, all right," Sterling said. "Look at the shadows. The fuel trucks haven't moved an inch in 48 hours. And this plane here? It's two-dimensional. It's just a cutout." "They've spent months on this," Thorne said, leaning against the wall. "Intelligence says they've diverted 3 trainloads of timber from the shipyards. They are taking this very seriously." "Well," Sterling sighed, "it's a nuisance. We can't bomb it, obviously. Bombs cost money. We'll just mark it as fake on the charts and ignore it." "Ignore it?" Thorne stood up. "Sir, with all due respect, that takes all the fun out of it. Sterling raised an eyebrow. War isn't meant to be fun, Lieutenant. It's meant to be efficient. Think about the psychology, sir, Thorne argued. That German colonel down there thinks he's a genius. He thinks he's outsmarting us. He's sitting there, rubbing his hands, waiting for us to drop a blockbuster on his plywood empire. So if we ignore him, he'll just keep building them. He'll think his camouflage is too good. But if we tell him that we know, Thorne grinned. It was the grin of a schoolboy who had just put a frog in the teacher's desk. If we tell him we know, we break his heart. We humiliate him. And a humiliated enemy makes mistakes. Sterling looked at the photo again. He looked at the fake planes. What do you have in mind, Thorne? I have a friend in the carpentry shop, sir. Give me 24 hours. The construction. In a shed behind the main hangar, the secret weapon was taking shape. It wasn't filled with TNT. It wasn't filled with incendiary jelly. It was filled with nothing but British oak. Corporal Higgins, a burly man with sawdust in his mustache, was planing the surface. It's beautiful, sir, Higgins said. Smoothest bomb I've ever made. It was a masterpiece, 6 feet long, shaped exactly like a 500-pound general-purpose bomb. They had even painted it olive drab with a yellow stripe around the nose. But on the side, in bright white paint, Thorne was carefully lettering a message.
Wood.
Wood for wood, Thorne translated. Or wood for the wooden dot. Are you sure this will drop straight? Higgins asked. It's weighted with lead in the nose, Thorne said. It'll fly true. I want to put this right through the roof of their fake command center. The obsession. Back in Holland, Oberst Braun was getting impatient. Why haven't they come? Braun paced his office in the real bunker, a mile from the fake airfield. The weather has been clear. The British must have seen it. Maybe they are scared of the flak guns? His adjutant suggested. The flak guns are made of drain pipes.
Braun shouted.
They don't know that. They should be terrified. Braun drove his Kubelwagen out to the decoy site. He inspected the work. He had ordered his men to build a control tower out of scaffolding and canvas. He had even placed mannequins in the windows, dressed in Luftwaffe uniforms, holding binoculars. It is a work of art, Braun whispered, touching the fake brickwork. It is the greatest trap in the Third Reich. He looked up at the gray sky. Come on, Tommy, he challenged the empty air. Come and break your teeth on my wood. The briefing. You are authorized for a single sortie, Wing Commander Sterling said, handing Thorne the flight plan. Operation Pinocchio. The pilots in the briefing room erupted in laughter. This is not a joke. Sterling tried to sound stern, but the corner of his mouth twitched. This is a psychological dominance operation. You are to fly to Grid 44 North. You are to locate the decoy airfield. You are to deliver the payload. What about fighter cover? A young pilot asked. Thorne is going alone, Sterling said. A mosquito doesn't need a bodyguard to bite an elephant. Thorne zipped up his flight jacket. He looked at his mechanic. Is the package loaded? Strapped to the center rack, sir. The mechanic grinned. I polished it with beeswax. It shines like a diamond. Thorne walked out to his plane. It wasn't the unarmed Spitfire this time. It was a mosquito bomber, fast, wooden itself, and capable of pinpoint accuracy. He climbed into the cockpit. The engines roared to life. Woody to tower, Thorne radioed. Ready for takeoff. Requesting permission to deliver the furniture. Permission granted, Woody. Give them hell. The mosquito taxied down the runway. Under its belly hung the strangest weapon of the war. A large, heavy, perfectly carved log. Thorne pulled back on the stick. The plane leaped into the air, banking toward the channel. All right, Fritz, Thorne muttered, watching the English coast fade away. You spent 3 months building your house of cards. I'm coming to blow it down. The approach. The English Channel was a blur of gray water beneath the wings of Jack Thorne's Mosquito. He was flying on the deck, 20 feet above the waves, to stay under the German radar. Coastline in 2 minutes, Thorne muttered, checking his map. He pulled back on the stick, lifting the wooden bomber over the dunes of Holland. The windmills flashed by. He scared a herd of cows. He wasn't looking for a factory. He wasn't looking for a train yard. He was looking for a theater set. There you are, Thorn grinned. In the distance, the fake airfield of Onlagaby appeared. It was bathed in sunlight. The fake planes were still there, motionless. The fake soldiers were standing guard. Arming payload, Thorn said, flipping the switch. Usually, this switch armed the fuses of high-explosive bombs. Today, it simply released the latch holding the giant log of British oak. The panic. On the ground, Oberst Braun was showing the sight to a visiting general from Berlin. As you can see, General, Braun boasted, pointing to the plywood hangars. It is indistinguishable from the real thing. We will draw the RAF into a trap. The general nodded, impressed. Very good, Braun. Very good. Suddenly, the air was torn apart by the scream of twin Merlin engines. Fighter-bomber! A lookout screamed. Braun looked up. He saw the silhouette of the Mosquito diving straight for them. It was coming in fast, aimed directly at the center of the runway. Cover! Braun yelled, tackling the general into a ditch. Take cover! The German soldiers scattered. They dove into their foxholes. They braced themselves for the shockwave. They waited for the earth-shattering kaboom of a 500-pound bomb. Thorn leveled the Mosquito at 200 feet. He lined up the crosshairs on a particularly nice-looking wooden Messerschmitt. Special delivery, Thorn whispered. He pressed the release button. The plane jumped slightly as the weight fell away. The impact. Braun squeezed his eyes shut. He covered his ears. He prayed to survive the blast. He heard the whistle of the falling object. And then, thunk.
No explosión.
No fire.
No shrapnel.
Just the sound of heavy wood hitting hard earth. Thunk, bomp, bomp, bomp.
Braun waited.
Was it a dud? Was it a delayed fuse? He slowly lifted his head above the edge of the ditch. The dust was settling. In the middle of the runway, surrounded by the pristine fake planes, lay a large, olive-drab object. It hadn't exploded. It had bounced. It had smashed the wing off one of the wooden fighters and come to rest against the wheel of a fake fuel truck. Unexploded ordnance, a sergeant yelled. Stay back. Wait, the general said, standing up and brushing dirt from his uniform. That bomb. It looks wrong.
Braun squinted.
The bomb didn't have the metallic sheen of steel. It looked grainy. Braun climbed out of the ditch. He walked toward the object, his heart pounding. If it was a time bomb, he was a dead man. But curiosity pulled him forward. He got within 10 feet. He stopped. His jaw dropped. It wasn't metal. It was oak. It was a log carved and painted to look like a bomb. And on the side, painted in bright, mocking white letters, was a message in English. Wood for wood. The humiliation. The general walked up behind Braun. He read the message. He looked at the wooden planes. He looked at the wooden hangars. He looked at the wooden bomb. A vein began to throb in the general's forehead. So, the general said, his voice dripping with ice, the British have found your masterpiece, Braun. It seems so, Herr General. And they are not afraid of it, the general continued. They are laughing at it. They are laughing at us. From the cockpit of the Mosquito, Jack Thorn banked hard to the left. He looked down and saw the tiny figures standing around his gift. He tipped his wing, a universal gesture of hello/goodbye, and roared away toward England. Back on the ground, the silence was deafening. The soldiers were slowly coming out of their holes. Some were suppressing giggles. Braun's face turned a deep, violent shade of purple. They think this is a game?
Braun hissed.
They think they can mock the Luftwaffe? He kicked the wooden bomb. He hurt his toe, which only made him angrier. Burn it, the general ordered, turning to walk to his car. Burn this whole embarrassing circus to the ground.
No, Braun shouted.
The general stopped. Excuse me, Oberst? Do not burn it, Braun said. His eyes were manic now. They think this place is a joke. They think it is safe. They think they can fly over it at 200 feet and drop logs on us. Braun looked at the sky where the mosquito had vanished. They have played their joke, Braun smiled. But there was no humor in it. Now I will play mine. The trap. 1 week later. Intelligence reports activity at Site B again, Wing Commander Sterling said, looking at the new photos. They didn't abandon it. Thorne leaned over the table. They're repairing the wooden plane I smashed. Tenacious devils. There's something else, Sterling said. We're seeing more trucks. Covered trucks. Moving at night. Maybe they're bringing in more timber? Thorne joked. Maybe they want to build a wooden battleship next? Maybe, Sterling said. But High Command wants to make sure. They want you to go back. Take a look. If they're rebuilding, maybe we should drop a box of termites this time. Thorne laughed. I'm game. Let's see what Braun is up to. The change. Thorne flew the same route. Low level. Fast. As he approached on Laga B, it looked exactly the same. The same wooden planes. The same wooden tower. Hello, old friends, Thorne whispered. Did you miss me? He lined up for another low pass. He wanted to get a photo of the repairs. He dropped to 500 feet. For 100 feet. He was relaxed. He knew the guns were fake. He knew the threats were hollow. He was wrong. On the ground, Oberst Braun was watching through a pair of high-powered binoculars. He saw the mosquito coming. Wait, Braun whispered into his radio. Wait until he is committed. Braun was standing next to one of the fake anti-aircraft guns. Except the drainpipe was gone. In its place was a quadruple-barreled 20mm flak-Vierling 38 cannon, covered with a canvas sheet painted to look like wood. All around the airfield, the wooden planes had been pushed aside. Hidden under nets were real Bf-109s, engines warmed up, pilots in the cockpits. Braun had turned the decoy into a hornet's nest. He thinks we are wood, Braun grinned. Let's show him our steel. Thorne crossed the perimeter fence. Now!
Braun screamed.
The canvas covers were thrown off. The ground erupted in fire. The hornet's nest. The sky turned into a wall of fire. Jack Thorne didn't have time to think. He reacted on instinct. The tracers from the hidden flak-Vierling cannons weren't wooden props. They were screaming lines of green phosphorus that tore through the air at 3,000 feet per second. Thwack thwack. 2 shells punched through the mosquito's plywood fuselage. The plane shuddered violently. It's a trap, Thorne screamed into the radio. Blue leader to base. The wood is biting back. I repeat, the wood is biting back. On the ground, Oberst Braun was screaming with joy. Fire! Fire! Don't let him escape. The fake airfield was now a kill zone. The camouflage nets fell away from real Bf-109 fighters. Their engines roared as they began to taxi, hunting for the intruder. Thorne was at 300 feet, trapped in a cone of anti-aircraft fire. Come on, old girl. Thorne gritted his teeth, slamming the throttle of the Mosquito through the gate. Show them what British wood can do. The Mosquito was known as the Wooden Wonder. It was made of spruce and balsa, lighter than any metal fighter. And because it was light, it was fast. Thorne didn't pull up, that would make him a slow target against the blue sky. Instead, he pushed the nose down. He dropped to 50 feet. He was flying lower than the hangars. He was weaving between the fake buildings, using Braun's own masterpiece as cover against the flak guns. A 20mm shell clipped his tail rudder. The pedals kicked against his feet. Too close, Thorne gasped. He banked hard around the fake control tower, where the mannequins watched blankly, and shot out over the sea. The German flak guns couldn't track him fast enough. He was a blur of speed, skimming the whitecaps of the North Sea. Braun threw his binoculars into the mud. He escaped.
Braun roared.
Launch the fighters. Catch him. But it was too late. The Mosquito was already a dot on the horizon, trailing a thin line of smoke, heading home. The realization. RAF Benson. 2 hours later. The mechanic whistled as he looked at the holes in the Mosquito's tail. Real steel, sir, the mechanic said, digging a jagged piece of shrapnel out of the wood. German 20mm. This wasn't a training exercise. Thorn walked into the debriefing room. He slammed the piece of shrapnel onto the map table. They didn't just rebuild it, sir, Thorn told Wing Commander Sterling. They reinforced it. Real guns. Real fighters. I saw at least 12 BF-109s hidden under the nets. And a full flak battery. Sterling picked up the shrapnel. He looked at the map of Onlaga B. So, Sterling mused, Oberst Braun took the bait. Bait? Thorn asked. Sir, I nearly got shot down. It wasn't bait. It was an ambush. No, Thorn. Sterling smiled cold and hard. Think about it. For months, that airfield was useless to us. It was a waste of a bomb. But now, Sterling tapped the map. Now, Braun has moved real anti-aircraft guns there. He has moved a squadron of real fighters there. He has moved fuel, ammo, and men. He did it to trap you. Sterling looked up, his eyes gleaming. In his anger, he turned a fake target into a real target. He concentrated his assets in a place we know perfectly. Thorn started to smile. He wanted us to bomb it. Exactly, Sterling said. He wanted us to waste bombs on wood. So, let's give the man what he wants. The wooden bomb again? Thorn asked. Sterling shook his head. No. The joke is over. Now comes the punchline. The return. The next morning. Dawn. Oberst Braun was feeling smug. He had driven off the British reconnaissance plane. His airfield was now a fortress. He was sure the British were terrified. They won't come back, Braun told his pilots. They know we have teeth now. The air raid siren began to wail. It wasn't the slow, lazy wail of a drill. It was the urgent, screaming pitch of imminent attack. Scramble,
Braun yelled.
Get the 109s in the air. He ran outside. He looked up. It wasn't a single mosquito this time. The sky was filled with the heavy, thrumming roar of four-engine beasts. Lancasters, 12 of them, flying in formation, escorted by a swarm of Spitfires. They weren't flying low. They were at 15,000 feet, untouchable by the light flak Braun had installed. To the bunkers,
Braun screamed.
But the bunkers at Onlaga B were fake. They were just mounds of dirt over shallow trenches. The rain, the bomb bay doors of the lead Lancaster opened. Thorn wasn't flying this time. He was sitting in the co-pilot seat of the lead bomber, watching through the plexiglass. Target acquired, the bombardier said. Center of the runway, where the wooden bomb was. Drop them, Thorn whispered. This time there was no wood. Tons of high-explosive cookies, 4,000-pound blockbuster bombs, tumbled from the belly of the giants. They fell in a straight line, whistling the song of doom. Oberst Braun dived into a muddy ditch, covering his head with his hands, realizing too late the magnitude of his mistake. Crackboom. The earth liquefied. The first bomb hit the runway, vaporizing the fake wooden planes and the real BF-109s hidden amongst them. The second bomb hit the fuel depot. The fake trucks, which Braun had replaced with real ones to sell the illusion, exploded in a mushroom cloud of gasoline. The third bomb hit the fake control tower. The mannequins were blown into sawdust. The fake flak guns were tossed into the air like toys. The real flak guns were twisted into scrap metal. For 10 minutes, the decoy airfield was subjected to the heaviest bombardment of the week. The British weren't just destroying it. They were erasing it. The aftermath. When the dust settled, Onlaga B was gone. There were no hangars, no planes, no grass, just a moonscape of craters and burning debris. Oberst Braun climbed out of his hole. His uniform was shredded. His face was black with soot. He was deaf from the concussions. He stumbled across the ruined runway. He looked at the wreckage of his masterpiece. The deception was over. Then he saw it. Near the center of the destruction, sticking out of the mud, untouched by the fire, was a small object. It must have been dropped by the last plane, a small parachute retarding its fall. Braun walked over to it. It was a metal canister. Braun's hands shook as he opened it. He expected a grenade, a booby trap. Inside was a simple piece of paper, a message dropped by Flight Lieutenant Thorn. Braun unfolded the note. It read, "Congratulations. We finally found a target worthy of our steel." Braun looked at the note. He looked at his burning airfield. He sat down in the mud and began to laugh. It was the laughter of a man who realized he had been played from the very beginning. Epilogue. The story of the wooden bomb became a legend in the RAF. Oberst Braun was transferred to the Eastern Front, where the jokes were fewer and the winters were colder. Jack Woody Thorne survived the war. He opened a furniture shop in London. Every year, on the anniversary of the raid, he would carve a small wooden bomb and place it on the mantelpiece. A reminder that in war, the most dangerous weapon isn't the bomb you drop. It's the mind of the enemy you deceive.